government plans that we've been reporting on this morning could see household gas bills increase by as much as £100 per year, while the cost of electricity could come down. It's a bid to cut Britain's carbon emissions. It's part of a wider plan to invest in the UK's energy security and infrastructure. So let's talk to the Energy Secretary, Grant Shapps. Very good morning to you, Mr. Shapps. This is
morning.
All well and good if you're trying to combat climate change and reach net zero. The trouble is, all people hear is, my bills are going to go up. Will they?
No, and in fact, actually, that £100 shift would be from gas to giving the money off electricity instead, largely because the whole economy is moving towards electricity. First of all, I should say we've been really stung by Putin.
So can we just establish that? Sorry, Mr. Shapps. So
yes,
you're saying that gas bills will not go up in order to shift towards electricity?
So one of the proposals, it's not, which we said we will consult on today, is moving. There are a bunch of levy charges, essentially, and this is quite a minor point of the overall plan, by the way, but there's about £100, which actually could go, which at the moment is on people's electricity bills, which could go on the gas bills instead. If it went on the electricity bills, we think it would save people money overall. And so that's why we're proposing making that shift. But it really makes no difference to most people. Most people are paying electricity and gas. It's a pretty minor part of a much, much bigger plan today. What I was saying is that we've been paying about half of people's typical energy bills this winter, although it won't have felt that way because we've seen bills go up because of Putin's war. The plan today is about getting our long-term energy security and getting some of the cheapest energy in Europe, and that's what today's Powering Up Britain plan is all about.
£100 isn't a small amount of money for people.
It's not, but most people have electricity and gas, and so say it won't make difference to anyone because they're paying both already. They'll get it off the electricity bill. And actually, for a bunch of technical reasons, probably not time to go into, it will actually save money overall.
But are you trying to force people? Because the impression is, are you trying to force people to stop using gas? I mean, for instance, just talking personally, I've got a gas-fired boiler, I've got a gas hob. I don't particularly want my gas prices to go up. They're already very expensive. Do you want me to stop using that? And if you do, how are you going to make me do that?
Yeah, no, not in the short term is the answer. People carry on, like you, I have a gas boiler in my house and people have to carry on using gas. We recognise that this transition is going to take a long time, but over a period of time, the whole economy, everything that we do is becoming more and more reliant on electricity, and as a result, we want to reduce the price of electricity to make that a more comfortable transition. But as I say, the big plan is really about how we get to the cheapest energy prices in Europe. That's one of over 70 measures today, which include things like massive new opportunities for this country. I'm here at the Fusion Centre in Culham in Oxfordshire, where one day we could be producing almost endless and very, very inexpensive energy through nuclear fusion, as opposed to fission, which is what the current nuclear reactors use. So new technologies, but also things in the shorter term to try to help people.
Mr. Shapps, I mean, people will be saying, you've been in power for 13 years, and now to come in and say you've suddenly got a big plan. When David Cameron took over in 2010, he was reported 2 years later saying, let's get rid of the green crap. Boris Johnson, and those are his words, apparently, he spoke to his aides, let's get rid of the green crap. Boris Johnson got rid of the green home grants recently. Your own energy minister, who conducted a review on behalf of the Tory government. He's a Conservative. He had said himself that in a net zero review that the Conservatives had failed on nearly every aspect of reaching their targets and a net zero policy. Why has it taken you 13 years?
So I don't actually agree with any of that, and you're partially quoting people. But if you look at the record, we've gone from being one of the countries with very high carbon levels to one which has cut our carbon more than any other advanced nation in the world. So there is no other nation that has done what we've done of the G7, the big economies, in cutting carbon whilst growing the economy. And yesterday, for example, on our energy production, 70% of our energy was either renewable or nuclear. And now that does vary depending on whether the wind's blowing or the sun is shining, of course. That's why I want to build more nuclear. So today I'm launching Great British Nuclear to set out our programme of new nuclear power for this country, including small modular reactors, all of which, as I say, is designed to provide us the energy security and power Britain from Britain. So no, we've done incredibly well. No other country matches us when it comes to reducing carbon. Of course, we've had this war in Europe. It's cost a lot of money. We've been paying about half of the typical energy bill, though it's not felt that way. I want to make sure we bring down bills for good and bring
British
real
homes,
energy independence.
British homes are amongst the worst when it comes to insulation across the whole of Europe.
So, of course, we've got very old housing stock from the Victorian, and they weren't brilliant at insulation. But even there, massive progress has been made. So when we came in... Well, let me give you some facts, because I think it's useful to sort of base it on facts. When we came in, back in David Cameron's days, as you said, only 14%, 1/4, of homes were insulated properly. Today, that's nearly half, 47%. So we have made a lot of progress. You mentioned one scheme which has been shut, 21 others have been open. So we're always looking for the schemes that work. We don't keep them open when they're not working properly. But we've made significant progress, much further to go, as you say, though.
Is the scheme that has been cut, the Green Homes Grant Scheme, which the National Audit Office said had wasted £1 billion of taxpayers' money?
So there have been, I'd say, 22 different schemes. I know there was the Green Deal, which was a scheme which didn't work particularly well, and if they're not working, I don't see any point in keeping them open.
How do we waste so much money, and how do you make sure that your new proposals don't also waste £1 billion of taxpayers' money?
Well, the government doesn't itself go around and make these adjustments to homes and to insulation. We have to rely on partners, including local councils and others, to do it. One of the things I'm announcing today with the Great British Insulation Fund, that's £1 billion, is the opportunity for homeowners, renters and people to actually access funds to improve the insulation in their homes and save about £350 a year in doing so. Just yesterday, or rather earlier in the week, I announced £1.8 billion, I think actually it was, for local authorities, for councils to do that with more of our social housing stock as well. So we're doing it in lots of different ways, but it's wrong to say that nothing has changed. We've got nearly half our homes from a very small base now properly insulated. I acknowledge that means we've got another half to do, which was one of the reasons we're setting out so much detail in over 1,000 pages today in this Powering Up Britain document.
All right. Talking of taxpayers' money, why are we spending taxpayers' money on sending asylum seekers, a lot of them genuine asylum seekers, apparently to ex-army barracks that have inadequate heating and hot water? Instead, why don't we spend taxpayers' money on making the process and the system more efficient, and therefore processing those applicants and work out who can get into the labour force and work in this country and who hasn't passed the criteria to be here? Why are we wasting money on barges, on cruise ships and ex-prisons?
Well, I don't think it's right for people, for their health, let alone for the communities in this country, to house people in hotels, which are, by their very nature, intended for short stays for longer periods of time. I mean, we clearly need to do both. We need to be processing faster. We need to be using better accommodation, and accommodation will be specifically, custom designed to be able to house people whilst their applications are being considered. And most important of all, we've got to ensure that traffickers, don't bring people illegally to this country in the most dangerous way possible. Do you think
a barge is appropriate accommodation? Would you stay in a barge? If your family were in trouble, would you be happy with them living in a barge or in an ex-prison, in army barracks that has no heating and hot water?
Well, all of these places would have to be up to proper living standards, including accommodation on, for example, army bases, which could be much better set up than a hotel. I've got a couple of them in my constituency. They're across the country, and they're not particularly well placed to help people through their asylum process, not least because you don't have all the services that you need in a hotel, but you could have that if you properly set up accommodation centres in their different forms. But the most important thing I just want to go back to is stopping traffickers, bringing people here in the first place, which is why we are legislating to do that. Sadly, Labour doesn't want to do it. They keep voting against every proposal that we have to stop people from coming here and to make it illegal to come here illegally. And that, to me, is insane. How are you going to stop the flow if you don't stop the problem in the first place, let alone, of course, then sorting out...
Do you agree with some of your fellow Conservative MPs that so there should be more legal routes then, legal and safe routes? That's what some of your fellow Conservative MPs say is part of the solution.
Look, I mean, we get into this discussion on side. This country has a massively big heart. I've got Ukrainians living in my home. They've been there for the last year. This country welcomes people who are in distress. And by the way, there are legal routes, for example, through displaced people's camps, refugee camps in other countries. I've visited some of them in the past. And we bring people here direct. What we can't have is people coming from free and safe France, being people trafficked in an illegal and dangerous way across the channel and turn a blind eye to it as if that is fine. It's not OK, and I can't believe we even have to keep having this conversation, and that, frankly, that the opposition, that the Labour Party, don't want to stop it either.
OK.
We need to leave it there. Grant Shapps, thanks very much indeed.